My big word for the day: regulation and screen time limits. Don't push your kids to go to the room and get on the computer and play games or jump in the virtual reality shit just to get them out of your hair.
Yes, and by regulation, I don't mean don't trust the government to regulate this crap for you. I believe people need to be watching over this.
Right, the parents need to do it.
1,000%, but the regulation needs to happen at home.
Right.
The regulation that you structure your child with needs to happen at home. You need to take the time to sit down with your kid and learn.
And beat their ass.
Kids learn how to speak based on what they hear in the home.
Absolutely.
Okay? This is how a baby actually learns its first words. This is why you go to... I've been over to some people's houses and they have a child that's like 4 and they will say like the craziest thing. Like, can you believe that just happened? That is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm like... And they're not... It's like ridiculous. Like, they're not quite there in saying the word, but you know what they're saying. Like, that's what I mean. They're using big words and they understand what they're saying. And you're like, what? And then you go to the parents and they're similar conversations. And they're structured in a way that the child understands what is ridiculous and what isn't ridiculous in the actual form without needing a definition, which is amazing to me.
Record. Let's go to scenes and go to duel.
Oh my. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Hard Podcast. We are still live. We're in an undisclosed location today because me and Chris need to argue about a few things. And I don't think that you all have enjoyed yet a good debate.
Oh.
Debate, should we call it?
I'm so glad you interrupted me.
How now, brown cow. This is how you warm up when you are famous. It's red leather, yellow leather. Like, come on.
One day
I can't be the only one that knows what this is. And which camera am I supposed to be looking at?
Brian.
Boom.
The usual.
Okay. It's really weird when you can see yourself on the screen because I usually don't, which is fine. I don't need to pay attention to the screen. It's just kind of funny because now, ladies and gentlemen, now that we have the man, myth, the legend with us, I don't have to wonder what he's doing.
So used to having to see the screen.
But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, Chris sent me a picture. What was it, 2 days ago, 3 days ago?
You weren't supposed to tell anybody about that.
Well, I'm not going to put it on the internet unless you all join my OnlyFans. It's called Chris's Feet Pics is the name. And just see me there.
I've been exposed.
No, you sent me a picture of... Well, Chris, I'll just let you explain it because, to be honest with you, I looked at it, I got my judgment face on and kind of smirked, and then we got into a conversation that ended up enjoyable, and so I stopped us and said, let's continue this on the podcast. So why don't you tell everybody kind of what this whole thing was and your beginning thoughts on it, and then we're just going to argue about it.
Okay, so what I sent Brian was an email that I got. Had to do with virtual reality being used more widely now in mental health in schools, counseling sessions, and things of that nature. And Brian stated that this is going to make mental health so much worse, and he will destroy me with the facts that he has.
Okay, hold on. Let me just... I'm not right? Like, that's a perspective.
No, you say.
My opinion is I feel more beneficial, but right and wrong is a matter of perspective, right? We're not talking about 2 + 2. We're not talking about whether or not the sky is blue. We're not talking about factual data based on science. We're talking about an opinion. And so my opinion is this is a horrible idea. I've read a great book called The Coddling of the American Mind, and what has happened every time we have leaned in with the wrong intentions of helping people. You're struggling with something, okay, I've got a new medication for you. So we've got 9 million vaccines out for your children now, and that data has shown that since the 1940s, actual diseases in children that are lifelong and more damaging have gone up in the 46%. Like, that's where they register now. They were at like 2% in the early 1940s, 1950s before this all started to happen. Now they're at upwards of 46%. So I'm basing it off of what I'm seeing them do with the whole let's make everything easier. Now, the one that I agree with is virtual counseling sessions. Life gets very confusing and tough and hard to schedule in things, and when you just need to talk to someone, I feel like, because I do a lot of coaching with people virtually, so I don't have a problem with the general virtual session. I have a problem with virtual learning because we're not teaching the children how to deal with difficult day-to-day things. We're not teaching them how to socially interact with each other. We're making all of their struggles that built America and built some of the strongest men and women that you see today. We're taking away that part of it and saying, okay, we're just going to make this even easier. And every time we do that, it kicks us in the butt. So I don't understand why we keep trying to do it.
Okay. I just heard a couple things. I heard everything, but
Absolutely.
there's a couple things that stood out. One of them, you said, whenever somebody has a problem, we say, here's a pill. Your problem solved, basically. With the virtual reality, since that's what we're kind of going
pill.
with. Yeah, absolutely. And it's awesome. No, that, I don't want to try to read through all this stuff that I had. I was going to bring a printout, but I said, well, I can kind of grasp the idea.
Yep.
They're talking about putting people in situations in a virtual world, the virtual version of a situation that they're afraid of. Let's say we're talking about people facing their fears.
Okay.
We could do that without a pill.
I agree, but is that what they're doing with this? Because it sounds like virtual learning, not virtual therapy. And virtual therapy on that level, because of where we're at in therapy, in my opinion, still needs to be heavily monitored by serious medical professionals. And I don't think we have enough of them to do this to children. It's a very big risk, in my opinion.
Yeah, the part that I was kind of rolling with was the counseling in specific. Okay. Honestly, I didn't really read the email. I just, the part that I highlighted, it was about using it for counseling sessions and so on. Virtual learning, let's say, I'm not saying that I would want all kids to be afraid to go to school, a public school or anything like that. There is more homeschooling going on, and then there's parents that work too much or whatever to be able to spend that much time at home and go through the lessons, the homework, and so on with their kids. I do agree that if a child were to learn what they're supposed to learn in school in a virtual environment, that would be very bad if they were in there, too often. There would have to be some other type of, obviously, human intervention as far as it goes. But I do see benefits to it because, any kid, including me as a kid, my son, like when he was, we did preschool online, pre-K, and it was ABC Mouse. They turned things into what kids are familiar with having fun with, which is video games. Yep. They make a game out of it.
Okay.
And even when I was a kid at 6 years old, back in 1992, I had Reader Rabbit and Math Blaster, MS-DOS games.
Okay.
And those games actually taught me some things that I don't know now, but that I don't use now. But I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't fun. That's why I was so happy in school to have computer lab and things like that. And that was kind of, virtual reality's been around since the 80s, but I didn't know about it until, the 2000s. But if they would have had that immersive environment, I would have probably been more apt to pay more attention. But I guess that's just, everybody's different. I think it would affect a lot of people differently, and it could have benefits for some people and problems for others.
So here's where I struggle with the VR side, the virtual reality side of things. Like, I agree that, because again, I don't do VR sessions with clients. I do interactive sessions with clients where we're both just on a camera in the comfort of our own home. When you stick a headset on the child, okay, it instantly turns into a game. This is what kids recognize headsets with. They don't have anything in their life that represents a headset with something serious. So we're going to take what they know about with the Oculus Quest and all these other game headsets, and we're going to put them on and say, okay, now it's time to deal with your problems. To me, that doesn't make sense. It's very confusing to a child. And when I was young, the more that things stopped making sense, the more that I started to struggle, the more that I started to question things. Like, I have told this story before, but when I was very young, my dad got busted. And when I came home and the police had surrounded the home, I looked in there and I saw my dad handcuffed to the table and thought to myself, wait a minute, you keep telling me I'm doing a bunch of stuff wrong. The police aren't after me. So that struck a chord with me, and I've carried it for a long time. Me and my dad are best friends. I don't blame him for it, but I started to question things as soon as that happened. Like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense based on what I'm being taught. What they've been taught so far is, let's wear the Oculus headset as let's go play a video game. I worry that we are trying to normalize VR very fast. And that is going to cause, in my opinion, the bigger set of, you can't fix internal problems with the outside world. We can't just say, okay, those that are struggling with social situations, let's throw a headset on you. And as long as you can interact with people in the VR world, you'll be fine in the outside world. That's completely different.
Yeah, I do agree with it causing serious social issues, even worsening them. Thinking they can throw on a headset and go in this world where nobody really sees what you really look like. You don't see what they look like. You don't know who they really are. And teaching them to, eventually I do agree they would just turn to that. Or how things really go. I kind of used to use video games as an escape when I was a kid, before I got into much worse escapes. And I can definitely see that causing issues. A generation of kids with head-mounted displays on, nearly 24 hours a day would be pretty bad.
I guess here's my problem, and this is probably going to strike a rough chord for a lot of people, and that's okay. What I have learned the most through a lot of outside perspective right now, I've interacted in my life with children I thought were mine because I've been tricked once. But in the world of parenting, in general, you don't know what's best for your kid. Only your kid knows what's best for your kid, and it's your job as a parent to provide a safe space for them to explore that in a different way. And what I mean by safe space is, if your kid makes a mistake, don't punish them to the degree where they're deathly afraid of making a mistake. They're not going to associate, I'll never do this specific thing again. When children get in trouble, they think, I never want to do anything wrong again, and that's not healthy. So there needs to be a healthier space where you can allow the kids to struggle and know that they're safe at home. See, I was always very open with my mom. We've been close since I was little, still are very close. Me and my dad are also close, but not in the same way. My mom was my safe space, so she knew everything about me. And because every time I made a mistake and I came to her with it, it wasn't like a big issue. It was just like, okay, tell me what's going on and let's talk about it. And I got to deal with things differently because I had a safe space to talk about it that was just judgment free. I mean, at 29 years old, 30 years old, I came home with a tattoo on my face, like just to visit. And then it wasn't like, oh, don't ever come home again. It was like, okay, we're here now, so tell me more about this. And that's kind of how it went. But I've based my life and my life experiences on doing everything that was against everything that they said I should do, because only I knew what was best for me. Right. And I need the space to explore that. So I don't want this VR getting normalized. I don't want this becoming another space where it's like, okay, now that it's way easier to just shove my kid in a VR therapy session, now I'm not going to be a parent.
Okay. What about it being normalized but regulated? Say kids got to go to school, do their thing, and maybe their homework, something to do in the virtual environment for maybe an hour. I
fully agree that we need to allow children to explore.
Right.
Yes. This is where you get their creative juices flowing. There's a different part of the brain that holds stress and a different part of the brain that holds creativity. And when you use this part of the brain that just allows you to explore and opens up your mind, things seem different. They look different. You can question things and understand different aspects. The greatest thing that I learned in life was that I didn't know anything, and that I'm still learning every day. I'm learning things about people. I just had an epiphany, I don't know, a month ago when we were talking about coaching, and I thought to myself, man, when I was like 9 years old, I looked across church and I saw a man that looked very sad. I don't remember this, but my mom has told me this story numerous times. She said, I looked at her and said, hold on, Mom. I walked straight up to a stranger and said, sir, do you need a hug? And I was a child. She said, you could see the pain in that man's eyes at a very young age. So I have been very good at reading people since I was little. That is a God-given gift, and I thank God for it every day because I can connect with people on a different level. Right. And I love that. But same thing, I got to explore a lot because my dad owned a business, so he was gone all the time. So we were running the streets. I had a pager at 9 years old because my parents couldn't find me. It was like, when I paid you with this, it means come home for dinner. Like, I'll pay you 9s, and then the 5:30, it means be home at 5:30 for dinner. Like, we had codes. And so I got to explore and really get out in the scary world where no parents want their kid anymore, and it doesn't make any sense to me. Let your kids go out and play. You can't stop something bad from happening to your child, period. because some of the most protected children in the world get kidnapped.
Yeah, and I say this a lot too. This type of shit happens all the time.
Yes.
It always has. It's always been the same. It's not getting better or worse. It's just on TV more. It's been, the media talks about it a lot more. It feels like it is televised a lot more so that we are scared.
Scared.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for, because I was literally just thinking that in my head right now. We are teaching our children to be afraid. We're saying, A, I don't trust you. That's the first thing a child hears when you say, no, you can't go outside and play. It's, I don't trust you. That's what you hear as a kid. If you can relate to this, put a comment down below, because I hope that you get it, because that's what I heard. It was like, why? Like, I know what I'm doing. I mean, I may be 7, but of course we know what we're doing our whole entire lives, right? So when I was 7, I knew everything I was doing. And it was like, no, you can't. The only time I couldn't go outside when I was little was when my homework wasn't done or I was actually grounded. That was the only 2 times that I was not allowed outside.
Right.
And because of that, I have been able to struggle with addiction, survive it, touch people's lives. I have no fear of starting businesses, running businesses, jumping into businesses, growing through things. I jump into things that scare me all the time because I enjoy the rush, because I know I'm always going to be okay, because damn it, if I've made it this far, something stops me now, then I guess it's just my time.
What you said, I never really thought about too much. I was made to go outside all the time as a kid. I tried to come in, stuff going on I wasn't supposed to know about. I was made to go outside. Yep. So I stayed outside a lot, and I hated it. And I think that's why I became an inside person for a long time, but I've jumped out of that, isolation bubble quite a bit.
Yeah.
But, it was never, back when I was a kid, I was never scared of anything because I never saw anything on TV about that. Parents didn't talk about anything like that. Now that seems to be really all it is.
You were being forced to jump outside, in my opinion, because I feel like something that hit me the other day, and I just want everybody to think about this for a moment. 50 years ago, okay? We didn't have little Power Wheels. We didn't, the toys that you had were like Lincoln Logs and basic stuff. I don't even know how long
Tinker
Legos
toys.
have been around. Maybe Legos, right? Because I think Legos been around for a while. But when you think about today, our kids have a ridiculous amount of access to fun. Now, that is a dopamine response. It's the reward system, right? So if you're constantly stimulating your mind with things that are fun, and then as you grow older, those things naturally will die off and not become as fun, but now you can't find something to get stimulated with. Now you're stuck in a depressive thought because you don't know how to stimulate your mind, and now you think the world's over because you're so used to being stimulated for so long. My brain was not stimulated as a child. My brain was afraid because I was out exploring and I would get into bad situations. I got jumped by the 3 people. I'm not going to call it their ethnicity. I got jumped by 3 people for my pager. One of them hit me over the head with one of those little mini baseball bats. Over a freaking $60 pager, right?
Sorry.
But it happened, and I'm fine. Could it have gone worse? Yes, but gosh, I could have walked out in the street and gotten cracked by a ice cream truck. Could have happened is an infinite possibility of whatever you want. I dealt with real life crap.
Yeah, that's what I remembered I was trying to get at was, if I wouldn't have been made to stay outside and things of that nature, all we did as kids, you probably did a little more dangerous than me because you were born sooner, and it's just kind of gotten more and more isolated. It has gotten more isolated, the further the generations grow. I think that's why I was able to deal with a lot too, though. Right. Being homeless in Florida and California and things, being all, strung out and drunk and high on meth and things, even, being sober at some points, but I handled it. I found out ways to eat and everything else, and I did okay. I just don't think there's many kids in this generation. I was 20 years old at the time. I don't think there's a whole lot of 20-year-olds that would be okay with that.
I don't remember the last time I talked to a kid that knew how to check the oil in their car.
Right.
To be honest with you, I may have ran into one. I mean, I don't know a bunch of younger people, but the people that I have ran into through, I have stepson and his friends and other things like that, I'm just wow. We don't teach them how to take care of their vehicles. We don't teach them how to pay their bills. We don't teach them real life things. We put them on video games, and we do these VR sessions, and we make everything as easy as possible, where now there's a reward for everything when it comes to sports, and there's no reward when you actually do one of the hardest things like valedictorian, because there are schools trying to take that away, because now you don't get rewarded for actually being the smartest person who worked the hardest and deserves to be recognized.
So you're thinking pretty much further down the rabbit hole is what this will do with technology, the virtual reality stuff.
Yeah, like I trust me, I love VR. I have my phone, but like my phone broke when we were camping, and I didn't think, oh crap,
right?
What am I gonna do now? We had no power, and my wife was like, "What?" Like at the lake, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, something like that, and I was like, "What do you want to do?" I said, set up the generator or we'll just hang out. Like, I don't care. We're going down there. We're going to work. We're going to do what we need to do. I don't care. But I've been in those situations. People lose power today, and it's like the end of the world. It's like, holy crap, I don't know what to do. What do you mean you don't know what to do? Don't open your freezer because it'll actually keep it frozen for days. So don't open your freezer unless you have to. Here's some advice for those when you lose power. Don't open your freezer unless you have to. Your freezer will actually keep everything frozen for a long time, days, right?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead and consume what you can, figure out what you need, make sure that your water's stored up. If you're on a well, obviously you shouldn't be drinking that water anyways, but like these are all basic things that people don't realize. They don't know how to do.
Yeah.
We're taking away the basic concepts of living and we're making everything easy. Right. You cannot survive in a virtual world. If you put a headset on and you lived in that world, you'd have diabetes in less than 5 years. You'd probably be drastically overweight and very incapable of moving. You'd be filthy because you don't even want to get up to shower. Like, we're taking away the things that matter. VR should be a reward, is something that is, like, if I'm going to go into a VR therapy session, I'm going to get the most out of it. I don't want to go in it unless I'm going to get the most out of it.
Right. And we're talking about people, ultimately wanting to stay too long in that virtual world was one of the negative things that could come out of it. I think there could be a lot of positive, like I said, if it was regulated. But I also think that, besides virtual reality, all technology, especially phones, people that aren't outside people start going outside, but they're still on their phone. We'll go, camping, get on your phone. You don't really pay attention to the outside world. I think that is why so many people are so terrified when there is some type of issue, say a solar storm might take out the power grid for a while. People are going to lose their fucking minds.
Absolutely going to lose their minds.
They shouldn't. It's something that we can and will survive.
I'm going to look something real quick. Keep going, because this just cracks me up, so keep going.
Yeah, I mean, it's... I think people are being taught by technology to isolate, not be able to survive without all of these things that we didn't even used to have, and we've made it hundreds of thousands of years. We didn't even really have electricity until, 100 years ago?
1700s, what I was just looking up.
1700s, okay.
I thought it was longer ago than that, but thinking about that, okay, so...
Yes, same point.
Here's the reality of the world that we live in today. You're all watching this because we did something in our home, edited it, and then threw it on the internet, and you can access it from anywhere in the world, okay? When you hear this thing ring, you pick this thing up, right? And somebody on the other side of the world can hear you talk in real time immediately.
And you can watch a show on any device.
Like, that is the power of what we have. I understand that, which is great. But when you think all the way back to before America was America, and they were Indians here, and they were...
Native Americans.
Okay. Just talked to one the other day. He said Indian, so I'm saying Indian. It's a thing where electricity hasn't always been a part of this world, and electricity on this level is definitely not been a part of this world until into the 1900s, in my opinion. Now to the point where it's electric cars and all these things, and like we're at a level of technology where it is dangerous, and now we're trying to introduce more. Technology and all the things that we experience need to be a reward. In my opinion, you need to seriously convict people who text on their phone and cause a fatal accident. You might as well be drunk. Because you're drunk on your phone. You're not paying attention. You're not cognitive of what you're doing. That is the same thing as drinking. You are so focused on something that you can't focus on something else.
Imagine trying to drive with the virtual reality head-mounted display.
That'd be amazing if you were like on an open road in the middle of nowhere. But I feel like if you're going to go do that, then go play with your own life first before you play with others, because there are innocent people dying because of technology. We're doing nothing about it. We're simply adding more to it. Now I'm going to say to my child, you can't go on that headset. And they're going to look at me and go, but that's where I do therapy, so why not? How do you argue with that?
Well,
they did therapy. And now you're going to say, no, you can't go play a video game on that.
You beat them. You're grounded.
Beat them out.
Make them go outside. Beat their ass.
You do need to make your kids go outside. Like, it's a level of trust. Like, yes, I trust you. I trust that you're okay. I know you're going to be okay because I'm the one that's raising you, so everything's going to be fine. Go outside and play. And then you set ground rules. I want you home by this time. And you teach your kid how to read the watch and check time and watch how the sun moves and when to know when it's about that time. And, like, I knew when to be home because I knew where the sun would hit a certain part of my neighborhood, and that was when it was 5:30 in August.
And teach them how to handle certain situations that they might run into outside.
Yes.
Don't talk to fucking strangers.
Right.
Run, scream for help.
Yes.
Whatever you got to do. But we're not teaching them that anymore. They're going to go outside and these things are going to, I hate to say bad things are going to happen, but it is, if a kid doesn't know how to react to a certain situation like that, it's going to end up worse.
Here's the reality of kidnapping nowadays, if for those of you that don't follow any of this, because I'm following the Sound of Freedom, and I'm following the trafficking, and I'm following all of the data that is that people don't drive up in vans with no windows anymore and ask your kid if they want some candy. That is not something that happens.
They say they're from a church.
They don't even do that anymore. Like, when people nab their children, it's I nab your kid. Like, I grab your kid by the arm and I take your kid away. Period. It's that simple. There's no more, I'm going to take my time out there and I'm going to wooze your child into here, because everybody's aware of that now. Right. Kidnapping has changed. And most of the kidnapping that's happening right now is disgruntled parents that are fighting over custody. That is the most common form of kidnapping in America today, right. Are parents fighting over a child. So we're telling our kids not to worry about things while me and the wife or me and the husband are arguing about things and causing a bunch of issues that later on that kid ends up being worried about getting kidnapped by a parent. And then that turns into a whole nother situation. Like, if you want to talk about the dangers of the world are the parents today. They have no respect for fighting in front of their children. Go behind closed doors. Deal with your stuff behind closed doors. Don't teach your children. Me and my wife don't yell at each other because there's no point. I have a monotone, low voice naturally, and so sometimes it's hard to speak, so I raise my voice. But I've even had to structure that better because she takes that as yelling, because it's when my voice is either low or it's up here. And when it's up here, it carries a lot more to it. And so she feels a certain way about it, so I've stopped that. We have constructive conversations. What is the point of yelling at you? It's an ego match at that point. We're going to get into that in one of the next podcasts when you want to make your relationship better. I'll give you some key guidelines that I follow with my wife, and this is for me. I'm speaking for me, not for her. But it's something that you can do to help a relationship get better. But back to what we're talking about here, VR. To end this on a good note, VR can be an amazing tool if the parents are present in their children's life.
If they don't push them to
the time to structure it, introduce them properly, talk to your children. So many parents out there today are so checked out from their children. It is mind-boggling to me. They don't know anything. They don't know who their friends are. They don't know who they're hanging out with. And then they're shocked when something bad happens.
Right.
And then they blame the child for it, because now it's a child's responsibility, even though you put no structure in that child's mind.
My big word for the day: regulation and screen time limits. Don't push your kids to go to their room and get on the computer and play games or jump in the virtual reality shit, just to get them out of your hair.
Yes, and by regulation, I don't mean don't trust the government to regulate this crap for you. I believe people need to be watching over this.
Right, the parents
1,000%, but the regulation needs to happen at home. Right. The regulation that you structure your child with needs to happen at home. You need to take the time to sit down with your kid and learn.
And beat their ass.
Kids learn how to speak based on what they hear in the home.
Absolutely.
Okay? This is how a baby actually learns its first words. This is why you go to... I've been over to some people's houses and they have a child that's like 4 and they will say like the craziest thing. Like, can you believe that just happened? That is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm like, and they're not, it's like ridiculous. Like they're not quite there in saying the word, but you know what they're saying. Like, that's what I mean. They're using big words and they understand what they're saying. And you're like, what? And then you go to the parents and they're similar conversations. And they're structured in a way that the child understands what is ridiculous and what isn't ridiculous in the actual form without needing a definition, which is amazing to me. That's the power of the human mind. But that comes from active parents in the home that are having fun with their children. You need to have fun with your kids. Grow close to your children. Check in on your children and let them make mistakes. That is the biggest advice I can give any parent is let your child mess up. Right. Or they're never going to figure out that they will be okay when they mess up.
Correct. I concur.
So listen, y'all, we're going to be keeping this type of conversation going where I completely disagree that Chris thinks VR is like the next thing in the world.
It's a wonderful thing if it's regulated. I'm going to go home and get on it.
Chris is literally going to drive home.
I'm creating a virtual world right now, actually.
Watch the technology. Watch your children. Check in on your children. Be there for your children. Therapy is needed because the kids are just looking for someone to talk to. Right. That's where this comes from. Like, I just need to talk to someone. But we can dive into this on another time. But as a basic example, and I'll leave you guys with this: when you go to your child and you say, "Let me show you a better way to do that," your child hears, "I just did this wrong."
Virtual reality helps me with anxiety and depression.
Versus, here would be my next approach when you're talking to your child. Would you be open to me showing you a different way of doing that? Versus, let me show you a better way.
Would you be open to a different way, meaning the different way being VR?
Okay, we're going to try a VR session here. Yes, Chris, I'm open to anything. But then we're gonna track it. We're gonna mark data with it because data doesn't lie, and then we're gonna see what actually happens.
Okay.
I just don't like people playing with children on any level.
Right.
This is why I don't like a current person in office that sniffs babies.
Stuff.
And I guess sniffing is pretty popular in that family. That just came to me.
I don't know what's wrong with this place.
Oh, the white hair sniffs babies. The dark hair sniffs white stuff. That's where we're at. This is America, and everybody's watching us, and we are definitely going to dive into that because if you all don't understand what's going on right now, the whole entire world sees us because we are on the grand stage, and we look like a bunch of idiots right now because the leadership out there is acting like fools. We're too focused on stupid things, and we're not focused on the real thing, which is being a superpower, being something that adds benefit to the world, and being something that people want. We are the last thing that anybody wants anything to do with right now. And we're going to dive into that another time. So if you want to hear more about that, please comment below. Please like, subscribe, send us to your friends. Send us some comments. You can email us, fans@talkhardfans.com. We're going to jump on a TikTok here pretty soon and get TikTok flowing. Just, I want to hear feedback. I want to hear what's going on in your heads. I want to hear what you want to hear about. We're trying to reach a lot of different topics. And so as we explore through this, things are going to change. They're going to get better. That's about all I have for today, though, Chris. I think I have a VR headache. So do we have any VR Advil?
There's a pill for that.
Yes.
We have the same shoes almost. We love you.
Mine are real.
Yeah, mine are not. No batteries.
Oh, God, I love you, Chris. Thank you, guys. Love you. We'll see you next time.